Okay, I hope you all can hear me. We are having some technical difficulties here, and I do apologize for that. Zoom is not the user-friendly program they make themselves out to be. But with that in mind, I am going to get started. And again, if I have anybody cut off from here, I sincerely apologize, but I do want to respect everybody's time. Unfortunately, at the moment, my co-participant, Andres Montes de Oca, is having some trouble signing on, and that's where the delay came in here. I'm hoping he's able to get on to this presentation, but if not, I do have the recorded version from this morning. So for those of you who are listening in, I will get that information to you. I can send you that video link later on if we cannot connect him live to this presentation. But anyway, welcome to Successful Divorce Strategies for Smart Women. And I am Lori Barkus. I don't know if my video is showing. It doesn't appear to be, and I'm not quite sure why that is. But in any event, I'm going to get started on this presentation. And the place where we start with this is we start with you, because generally, when it comes to women in divorce, or generally women in any family situation, we tend to put everybody ahead of ourselves. Women tend to think about their children. They also tend to think about their families, what their families will think, what their families will say. A lot of times they also think about their spouse. And all of these things are certainly important, but it's far more important in order to go through this process that you are able to focus on yourself. Because as you probably already know, and as we'll discuss, this is a very difficult process to go through. Divorce is one of the hardest things that you can go through in your life. And if you are not well resourced, if you're not taking care of yourself, you will not be able to successfully handle the process or to help anybody else. Continuing on in talking about kids, and I don't know how many of you have children and how many of you don't, but for those of you who do, I know it is generally at the forefront of your minds. How are my kids going to do? Is this going to ruin their future? Is divorce a bad thing for them? It's not for me to tell you whether you should or should not divorce, but what I can tell you is the most important thing for your children is continuity. That things stay the same as much as possible. And that especially includes their relationship with both parents, as much as possible, that they can maintain that contact and maintain that relationship. And also that they are in an environment that is free from conflict. I'm going to move on to the next slide because it kind of illustrates that point. There was a long study that was done that followed children of divorce as adults 20 years later, to test the theory whether it was divorce that harmed children or whether they could actually get through it. And what was found is that these adult children were actually thriving. They were doing very well. And the reason why, as they reported themselves, was because they were not in a conflict environment anymore. And by removing the conflict, they were able to function an awful lot better. So again, I'm not here to tell you to divorce or not to divorce, but what I am going to emphasize is the most important thing for your kids is to reduce the level of conflict as much as possible. And I know that's easier said than done, given how emotional this process is. Certainly very difficult at the present time, given everything we're going through. I know a lot of people are staying at home right now, working from home. Some people are at home with their spouse in an already strained situation, and their kids, and everybody's together more than they normally are. But again, that kind of goes back to our first point about making sure that you are resourced and you're taking care of yourself so that you can avoid conflict as much as possible. After we focus on the kids, the next important piece of this equation is the financial planning piece, which again, Andres is going to address for you, and I will have that presentation for you if I can't get it up here today. But one of the most important things you can do in terms of getting ready for this process is understanding your finances. Because I can tell you, one of the biggest mistakes that people make in the divorce process is fighting over money that they don't have. And if you said that to somebody outside of the process, they would think that would be crazy, because attorneys cost money, experts cost money. Why people would spend money fighting over something that doesn't exist doesn't really make a lot of sense. But what happens is people don't understand their finances, and they don't understand their budget. They don't understand how much money there is. They don't take the time to plan for this step. And it leads to a lot of those nightmare divorces that we hear so much about. So one of the things we do after we focus on your own personal resources is that we help you create that financial plan and that budget. And we make sure that if you're not the person who handles that, if you're not the person who understands the finances, that we help you partner with somebody who can help you understand that, so that you are able to make decisions. And part of finances in divorce is alimony, which in Florida is an alimony state. It's a gender neutral alimony state. So those of you who are the income earners in your marriage, or the higher income earners, you may find yourself in a situation where you have to pay alimony. And those of you who are perhaps staying at home or a lower income earner, you may be in a position to receive alimony. I can tell you generally that Florida does not have any kind of guidelines for alimony like other states have passed that would make the process more defined and easier to navigate. Alimony is based on what is called need and ability to pay. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, which make it very difficult to talk about in a seminar format. It's something that you really want to make sure you understand in consultation with an attorney and perhaps a financial professional, so that you understand your possible exposure to alimony or the alimony that you should be receiving. And so let's turn to a kind of a big picture here. What we're really going for here is that this shouldn't be a process you just jump into and fight blindly or react blindly, which is something that people do an awful lot. And one of the things I hear a lot is, I need an aggressive lawyer. I need an aggressive divorce attorney. I need a pit bull. I need a very, very strong, tough person to fight my tough ex and my case that is more difficult than anybody else's. One of the things I can't emphasize enough is how much of a mistake this really is. And again, I've been in this field for over 20 years on all sides of it. I've done quite a lot of litigation, I still do. And I can tell you that hiring an aggressive lawyer is one of the biggest mistakes that anybody will make, especially if your spouse does so. Because what happens is the case takes on a life of its own. It just becomes a battle. You're hiring somebody to fight without any idea where you're going in this. If and when you hire a lawyer in this process, you should always know what your end game is. What is your plan? Not just that you want to get divorced. What is it that you're looking to get? What does the picture look like? The settlement, the trial? You should have those answers. You should also know the path that you're going down to get there. A lawyer that can't tell you that cannot adequately represent your interests. And just a little bit of a lighthearted moment here. And again, certainly not making fun of anybody's mental health issues or anything else. But something I hear an awful lot is, no, I really need an aggressive attorney because I have a crazy, quote unquote, soon-to-be ex-spouse, or there's some mental health issues. This is a very difficult, litigious person that's just going to fight me, so I need to fight as strong as they do. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's the worst thing to do with that personality type. Just this morning before our afternoon seminar, somebody had asked me to touch on that, what to do in a situation where a spouse has mental health issues, how to handle that. And I'll try to talk about that a little bit more, but when it comes to the aggressive lawyer, That is the worst person to work with when your spouse is a high conflict person, somebody with mental health issues, because that will really drive them to litigate more, to fight more. That will bring your kids more into this battle. And we'll talk a little bit more about some alternatives that you have to that. But before we do, I want to go into the concept of staying resourced. We've talked about how important it is to take care of yourself during this process. In order to do that, there's a few things that you need. In our consultation process, we do a very, very detailed intake that is reviewed thoroughly by me before I meet with potential clients. One of the things I ask is, what are your sources for support? Now, for a lot of people, that may be your friends, your family, perhaps a religious group, some form of support group. And I want to know what those are, what that support looks like for you, what these people do that is helpful to you. For other people, sometimes you're living far away from family. Sometimes because of your married situation, you've been a bit isolated. And some people may feel, I do not have a source of support. If you feel that way, it is okay. Please know that you're not alone in that. And please also know that we can find you those support resources. There are a lot of community resources out there, both online, as we're all discovering currently at this particular point in time, as well as other groups that gather when we're once again allowed to gather. And we will talk to you about how to create a support system that can help you, that can be part of your resource, that can help you stay focused on this so that your emotions don't get the better of you. And the other thing I talk to people about is what I call your pause. Your pause is any activity that allows you to get away from everything that's going on mentally and emotionally, and allows you to take a break before you kind of go over the edge, so to speak, with it. And I believe that everybody has this or can find it. If you're an exercise person like me, it might be running, it might be hiking, it might be something outdoors. Other people like things that are like puzzles or even cleaning your house, something like that. It's something that you turn to when you want to get a break. And it's very important that we find those things for you, because this is a difficult process. We can't make it not be a difficult process, but what we can do is give you the resources to get through it. And going back to those options for an aggressive attorney, one thing I hear a lot from people is they seem to think they have only two choices in life. Either I hire somebody who's real aggressive, who's going to fight hard for me, or it's somebody who's just too nice or not particularly competent, and that's why they're not aggressive. The thing is, there really is a middle ground, and those are the types of people you want to find to work with in this process. And that's somebody who can temper their own emotions, because believe me, you don't want to pay for somebody else to battle another lawyer because they like to argue this, or maybe they had a bad divorce and they're just kind of, they're litigious because of what they've been through. You certainly don't want to put your money into that. That's not going to get you good results. What you want is somebody who has experience and who's also strategic, that can help guide you through the process, give you a roadmap, and help you figure out where you want to go. But at the same time, is not afraid to go to court if you have to go there. And very few people do. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But if you need to, or if you need to press forward, you do need somebody that can stand up for you. And there are people that can do that without being overly aggressive. So kind of putting this together a little bit, what we're really going for here is a life plan for you. When people go through the divorce process, a lot of times they think that they get so consumed by it that they don't realize that there will be life after this. This isn't everything. And one of the ways that you are able to take yourself out of that thought process is by planning. It's also by staying resourced, but we've talked about that. We've built that base. But also knowing where you want to go. What is your financial plan? What are your career goals? If you've been out of the workforce for quite some time, are you thinking of going back? What would that look like? And also finding something for yourself, finding what your life is going to look like, even giving yourself something to look forward to. I'm not saying this is a great process. It won't be. This is a big ending. It's up there with death of a loved one in terms of grief and loss. But again, there is life afterwards, and knowing where you'd like to go with that, or even thinking about something that you'd like to do or create or accomplish will go a long way towards helping you get through this process. So to kind of sum up, do not hire an aggressive lawyer, one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Make sure that you have a strategy. Now, I always tell people that if you were only going to hire somebody for 2 hours, only 2 tasks, and I'm not necessarily recommending that, it may or may not be a good idea, but if that's what you're able to do or want to do, you want to meet with somebody in the beginning to understand the process. That's certainly one of them. We'll talk about the second one. But in that meeting, if you're meeting with a lawyer that you're thinking of hiring, by the end of that meeting, you should know the strategy. What are we trying to do? Or what information do we need to figure that out? And what are the exact steps we're going to take? Anybody that can't tell you that, you might want to have some questions about, because if you don't know where you're going with the process and the person that you're thinking of hiring can't articulate that, I think you're going to have a lot of problems. And the other thing is to plan, because again, this is about your life. This is about where you're going to go on a go-forward basis. I'm going to kind of go through these really quickly because I know you all have the materials. A lot of this is just some general information so that you have it. If you need it, some of you I know might be going through this on your own. You might be either going to mediation or handling your own divorce. So there's some useful information in here. Sorry, I went the wrong way. This is just a residency requirement for one of you to file for divorce in the state of Florida. And we have some information about the different forms that would need to be filled out. You can find those forms online. I think one of our slides will tell you where to find those. This is the procedure for people who can do this uncontested and get along, or if it is contested. Some information about a mandatory parenting class that you would have to take in the process. Just a couple more resources about family court and information. Also a couple things to keep in mind about changing your name, whether you want to do that, and also status quo, which basically means that when you file, certain districts have what's called the status quo order, which means that everything needs to be kept the same, that nobody can cancel insurance policies, nobody can take money out of bank accounts, nobody can take the children out of state. You want to know what those orders are in your particular jurisdiction where you live and where you're filing. A couple things about different resources. We've talked an awful lot about emotional and support resources and how you're going to handle that. In terms of financial resources, one thing I always remind people is that it may take a while for the process to move forward. If for some reason you're in need of support or you're in need of some financial relief, the courts sometimes take a little bit of time to react, and that's especially true right now. Most of the courts are functioning somewhat. They are still holding some hearings. Some judges are, some judges aren't. Different things are going on, but I can tell you there's already a backlog being created in a backlog situation. So if you find yourself going through divorce or thinking about it, one thing you want to think about is how to build some sort of cushion in case you're not receiving the support you normally were, or certain financial resources are not available to you because somebody did something they shouldn't do. So this can either be your own finances, setting aside an emergency fund, maybe it's borrowing from friends or family, perhaps it's looking into loan alternatives. I mean, there's different possibilities. Too much to go into here because again, it depends on your facts and circumstances, but it's something that you would want to flush out before you go through this process. And again, I hope you don't need it. I hope it doesn't come to that, but a lot of times I tell people to plan definitely plan for scenarios like this, because sometimes when you file for divorce, the other side can get really emotional. And if you do have a spouse with certain mental health or substance challenges or anger issues, that person may try to cut you off for a period of time. And knowing you have resources will kind of go a long way towards giving you a little bit of a comfort level during that time. Just a couple other resources that are available. There are self-help forms available in most jurisdictions on the clerk website that you can access on your own. There are some alternatives towards hiring a lawyer and basically having that person represent you for the entire process. There's something called modern law or unbundled legal services, which means basically you hire a lawyer for just part of the process. And again, we talked about consulting with somebody. Another thing, again, going back to that two-part recommendation, if you only hired somebody for two things, I would say hire somebody at the outset to tell you about your rights and responsibilities and to help you create a strategy and a game plan. And also, if you reach an agreement or your spouse creates an agreement and hands it to you, you certainly want to review that with somebody. And under an unbundled legal services, you could take an agreement to an attorney and say, I want to pay for your time to review this, to go over it with me, to make changes and suggestions. And under unbundled legal services, you can do that with any aspect of your case. You just have to find an attorney who works under that format and find out about the pricing of that. Another couple options that are great for people who are able to do them are mediation or collaborative law. Mediation involves a third party who's not an attorney for either person, who sits down with you and helps you resolve the issues in your divorce and can even help you prepare the agreement and the forms you need to fill out with court. I used to do a lot of pro se mediation, which is mediation for people who don't have lawyers. And it was a very rewarding part of my work when I had people who were able to do that. There's kind of different, some people can, depending on their level of cooperation and collaboration. Again, you don't have to be the best of friends. You could be in a difficult situation, but you do have to be able to sit down and talk and negotiate the process. Collaborative law, I'll kind of touch on briefly, so I can keep this moving along. Again, a great concept for people who are able to do things openly and honestly in a process in collaborative law. Both sides do have attorneys, and both sides agree that they will not go to court. Instead, they're going to work together to negotiate an agreement. They're going to share all information. They may work with different professionals, such as financial professionals, perhaps a mental health professional, to help everybody stay focused on the issues that are involved in the case. Again, great option for people who do not want to go through an adversarial process, who want to protect their kids from that process, and also try to preserve some kind of co-parenting relationship with their children. I think both are excellent. I'm also collaboratively trained. I've done some collaborative cases. They've been wonderful when they work. Unfortunately, not every case is suitable for collaborative law. So again, it's something that you want to have a very candid discussion, a very in-depth and candid discussion with an attorney about whether you and that attorney think that this is the right process for you. And these are just a couple other resources, a link to the court forms, some other reading, some community resources that might be helpful or useful to you. Now, I know I've covered this, but I do have this tendency of kind of repeating things when I think they're really important. And to me, because I hear this one so much, because I hear people say it and I hear people default to it, and no matter how much I hear people say at the outset, I want to be peaceful in this process, I want to resolve this. I think almost everybody says that, except for people who are really struggling with something, that maybe found out something difficult and are acting on their emotions, or again, people with certain emotional or mental health challenges. Everybody says they want to get through the process. Nobody wants to hire somebody and spend tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on the process. But there comes a point where that changes. People get scared, And you've probably seen right now in our current climate what happens when people get scared and make decisions. It's not the best decision-making process. Emotions tend to overwhelm us, and emotional decision-making is not the best way to go about it. So it's easy to get overwhelmed, emotional, feel threatened by your soon-to-be ex-spouse, threatened by the circumstances and scared, and think that you're going to run to somebody for protection. But the problem is that we have a very adversarial system, and when somebody gets aggressive in that adversarial system, it just makes things worse. If you have a high conflict party or somebody who's very difficult to deal with or has difficulty managing their emotions for whatever reason, getting aggressive with them is going to make things worse. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you fold, that you just give up and give in. There is a way to stand up for yourself. There is a way to be resourced and strategic and smart and find the right person who can guide you through the process and even take it all the way to court if necessary. But when it comes to aggressive attorneys, I don't know how many Shark Tank fans I have out there, but I'm going to quote Mr. Wonderful. Stop the madness on that one. That is what is contributing to all of these terrible divorces we hear about. A lot of the nightmare stories you've heard, maybe it happened to your family members, somebody you know. It's all because people just decided to fight with no goal or no end in sight. Now, continuing with that theme, you may or may not know this. Most people don't go to trial on a divorce. It's a very, very small percentage, less than 10%, probably even less than 5%. So at the end of the day, most people are going to settle because court is very expensive. It generally doesn't right the wrongs as you see them, and it doesn't do things in a way that feels fair to people when it comes to family court, especially when you look at the cost of getting there. So you might be wondering why people go to court. Well, a lot of times it's because attorneys tell them to. And there's really two reasons why. Unless you fall within that 5 to maybe 10% of cases where you just have somebody who cannot resolve something, where there's just such a level of not quite rational behavior and poor decision making. But for the rest of the cases where an attorney is telling you to go to court, it's usually either because they lack the experience or the ability to get a fair settlement. At the end of the day, most of this is about negotiation. And what you really want is to hire the best negotiator. But some people just aren't good at negotiating, so they're going to tell you to go to court because they're focused on what their strengths are, not yours. And the other reason is because court is a much more expensive process and it's more lucrative for the lawyer that's involved. Now that's not most lawyers. Most lawyers really try to do what's right for their attorneys, try to do what's right for their clients. But there are some people who really just simply want the money from litigation. So again, you might be that very small percentage that needs to go to trial on something, but I would caution you to be very wary of somebody who is leading with that, somebody who can't even generate possibilities of settlement, can't even talk to you about how you can try to settle your case. I would caution you to be very wary of that. Because at the end of the day, even a judge will not try your case until you've tried to settle it. In most cases, we'll go to mediation. So moving on and kind of wrapping up here, so I stick within my time limits. Sustainable Family Solutions is my company that I formed a little over a year ago. As I mentioned, I've been practicing for over 20 years. I'm in my 21st year of practicing family law, and I've worn many hats in that. I'm collaboratively trained. I was a certified mediator, did an awful lot of mediation. I've litigated a lot of cases, both in custody and in net worth type of matters, and I've settled quite a bit. And one of the things I looked at was what works and what doesn't. And I went through a very exhaustive analysis. I interviewed a lot of people, former judges, clients, everybody I could to get some perspective on that, to figure out what we can do to make this process better for you. to get you through this in a way that protects your interests and doesn't harm your children. And what we do is we plan, strategize, and prepare. As I mentioned, we do a very thorough and in-depth consultation. And there's a lot of prep work that goes into that. I have a very in-depth consultation form that I have people fill out. It's not just the basics. I get as much information as I can about you, about your divorce, about your finances, but also about you as a person. And then we have a very in-depth meeting. And that allows us to really flush out those issues. And we create two things for you. One is your legal strategy. I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but I can roadmap for you. This is where I'd like to see you get to, and these are the steps that I would take, at least at the outset. We may have to refine that strategy depending on what the other side does, but we come up with a strategy, and we come up with a resource plan so that you know you're not alone in this. You know that you know where to go. We then implement that plan, and we know what aggressive lawyers do. Done this for a long time. I've dealt with quite a few. I know how to neutralize a lot of those tactics. I know how to move forward and stay focused. And what we do is we prepare and we're solution focused. We want to see a resolution that's fair to you. We want to get there as quickly as possible. And again, all cases are going to end. Most are going to end in settlement. Some are going to end in trial. So if that's what it has to be, we're prepared. We're ready to go forward for you. And client satisfaction is very important. I will share with you, I have more cases than I know what to do with. I actually have to turn away a good bit of work at this point, especially working in 2 states as I do. I focus on working with the people that I can work with, that I know I can help. And your satisfaction is important to me because I've seen so many things in this field. And I know I can't make your life perfect. I can't change what has happened, but I want to at least create a resolution for you. And in order to do that, what we do is we have an offer for you. And I apologize, we do need to change this. There is no such thing as a pain-free divorce. But our goal is to make this as painless as possible for you. And what we do is we have a very comprehensive analysis that I've mentioned. It's a very detailed intake. The more information you can provide us, the better. We will give you a full audit of the assets and the income that you provided to us to let you know what a picture should look like. If you can get us all that information, we can get that for you as thorough and in-depth as possible. We look at your circumstances. We create strategy for you that you can either take with you to mediation in representing yourself, or that you can implement either with our firm or another firm of your choosing. We talk to you about when to file, which right now is actually really paramount. Just a quick side note, that's one of the questions I've received an awful lot about right now throughout the day, because things are changing for people. People want to know what's going to happen with support, what's going to happen with income, what's going to happen with assets. Those are all great questions. I can't delve into all that right now, but I can tell you that those are some of the things you really want to look at in terms of your individual situation. For instance, you might still be working, you might still be earning income, your spouse might have been laid off. You have income, your spouse doesn't. How does that affect the picture? Or vice versa. The income earner has less income right now, or perhaps isn't earning income. What's going to happen with that? Those are great questions that you really need to flesh out in terms of fact and circumstance. Now, this comprehensive evaluation that we do, the 90-minute meeting and the comprehensive evaluation that we do beforehand, and the audit that we put together and plan that we prepare for you, normally my discounted rate on that is $495. But in light of the circumstances that we're going through, because we're all in this together, and because of all the difficulties we've had throughout the day with this, our first Zoom conference, I am going to discount that even further for you. And we are going to offer that for $450. And there's also something else I do for you on that, which is that I offer a money-back guarantee. And I don't know too many attorneys that do that. And if at the end of that process, at the end of that audit and that analysis and what we've provided, if you don't feel that you received value, I will refund your money. And that is because I stand behind what I said. I do believe in this process as we've laid it out. And I also believe in your satisfaction. And that is pretty much my presentation. I apologize because I don't think Andres was able to get on here, and I'm not sure why that is. Andres Montes de Oica is, and I totally butchered that, I'm sorry, he is an excellent financial advisor, and even more important, an excellent person who has a personal interest in this type of work, in helping people navigate this process. He did a phenomenal presentation at our noon meeting, which I will share with anybody who wants to see it, as well as his slide presentation. I would encourage you all to reach out to him with any questions about a financial picture and in help putting that together. And also, if you have any questions about your current financial circumstances, your current investments or things like that, I'd encourage you to reach out to him. And if you need his information, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will get that to you. I apologize. Normally we take questions, but because we are online, I'm not going to do that because we are actually recording this. So I am going to sign off at this point, and thank you all very much for your time. For those of you who didn't get to this live, I apologize. I am going to record it. I am going to have a replay of it, and I'm going to make sure I address everybody's questions. And I wish you the best during this difficult time, not just in your own personal lives and what's going on. Again, we're all in it together. And I hope it all passes for us soon. And I hope you stay well and you stay resourced. Thank you so much for attending.